Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to see how we can export our vegetation scattered objects to game engines and such. So just a quick word, today we have a new update which is available. This is the subject of this video. This new update contains the procedural UV to real UV add-on that I'm selling aside of Roadscape. So now Roadscape is now shipped with this add-on and it is replacing the Roadscape UV operator. This is a much more developed and evolved version of the Roadscape UV generator, and you can use it outside of Roadscape. It's very useful for procedural UVs. Once you have downloaded the new release, which is the V3.0 unzip it, and you can go into your asset library and remove what you had before, which should be the 3.01, and replace it with the Roadscape V3.11 asset library. So let's do that. And we are going to see how we can now export vegetation scattered assets to game engines. So let's say we have an old project which was made with the Roadscape 3.1. We would then have to change and go search for the right textures. Okay, so I'm opening this project which was made with an older version of Roadscape. And so the first thing you want to do, you want to go and find the missing files. And so you can go into your asset library, Roadscape, textures, find the missing files. Now that we have our textures back, what's new in this update? We have a fix for wrong unwrapping on the vegetation assets. So this has been fixed. And let's say we have an already existing scene with a bunch of scattered vegetation going on, and we want to update to the last version of Roadscape without losing all of our vegetation assets scattered. So how we can do that? So first of all, what we want to do, we want to go and select in our scene the trees real mesh collection, the trees billboard collection, and the grass. We want to select all the objects inside the collections. Okay, so I'm started with the grass. I'm selecting the only grass object there is, and I'm going all the way up there to trees real mesh. I hold shift and select, and so I have everything selected, and now I delete it. Okay, so no more trees. That's the first step. The second step is to go into your asset library and select the vegetation assets and drop it into the scene. We now have new meshes inside our scene, and we want to Alt-R, Alt-S, Alt-G to reset the transforms, as always. Now, a new step, we want to go back to our original vegetation scattered object, so the one with which we used to scatter the vegetation prior to trying to update. And so in this original vegetation scatter, not the one that we've just dropped, so the original, you go there into here, and then instead of selecting, which is selected by default, the Roadscape Vegetation Scatter, you go and select the Roadscape Vegetation Scatter 3.011. Okay. Now that we have done this, we can simply insert the billboard collection in here, billboard, and here the real mesh. Okay. And so we now have our trees which are back. Okay. If you have a grass scattering going on, you can do exactly the same steps. You can select the correct vegetation scatter version and replace what you need to replace inside of here. If it is grass, you can simply, change stuff as it was. So now that we have done this, we can delete the newly imported vegetation scatter generator from the scene. So we now have this, and let's say we want to export this to game engine. So what we want to do, we want to go back into the vegetation scatter menu and simply hit realize instance. As soon as we do this, you can see that the textures are disappearing, and this is normal. Okay, so this is very good. Now you keep this object selected, and you can go Control A, visual geometry to mesh. Okay, so now we have everything outputted as real geometry, but our textures are still not here. So the next step we want to do, we want to install the procedural UVs to real UVs add-on. So you go install from disk, and you go search for the folder where you've downloaded the Roadscape 3.011 package from Blender Market. And then you go into the Roadscape folder, add-ons. You want to select the procedural UV to real UVs, zip, and say install from disk. Okay, now that we have installed procedural UVs to real UVs, you can see that you have the new add-on showing up in here. So the next step we want to do, we want to keep the vegetation scatter rasterized object selected. And we want to come here in attribute conversion, type UV map with the uppercase U, V, and M. And then we want to go and hit converted selected UVs. And as soon as we do that, we can see that now the UVs are back. And if we go back, let's say in shading mode, for example, we now have this material selected. You can see that we are now using correctly a texture coordinate and everything is working correctly. And so this is basically how you can prepare your vegetation scattered mesh to be exported into a game engine, guys. So this is basically how to do it. So a quick note about the procedural UV to real UVs add-on. This is now replacing the Roadscape UV operator add-on. And this is what you want to use now in order to transform your procedurally generated UVs from Roadscape into game engine ready UVs. So the different step that we need to do, for example, for the road, for the vegetation, you would use the UV map attribute by default. And let's say if we want to export the road, for example, instead of the vegetation, I'm going to quickly duplicate this. I'm going to apply everything. Let's say visual geometry to mesh. So now let's say that you want to export the road from a Roadscape. You want to use this add-on as well. And the way to do it is basically the same as with the vegetation. Simply, you want to type Roadscape UV. So for every generator except the vegetation scatter, you want to type Roadscape UV because this is the attribute used in every generator except the vegetation scatter. For anything that is vegetation scatter generated, you want to type UV map. Okay, this is pretty simple. So now that we want to have the road ready for our game engine, we can select the object that we have rasterized, which is our generated road. We can go with Roadscape UV in here. We select the object, convert selected UVs. Okay, we can see that now our textures are gone. We can then go into node management. We want to use the same attribute as the Roadscape UV, selected only, and we can go apply texture coordinate. And now our UVs are back. And you simply have to separate your mesh by terrain and unwrap manually the terrain again, because this is the only one which is not procedurally unwrapped. So this is how you can do it, guys. And yeah, more information about this add-on in a specific video, how to use it properly. But this is basically all you need to know about it. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.